What's good, everyone? Welcome back. Hawks Room Podcast, hosted by David Lee, aka DLee43 on all platforms. Please make sure you like, subscribe, follow the podcast, share with a friend. Three's a streak. The Hawks have now won 3 games in a row. A rock fight tonight versus Orlando, 112 to 106. So I'm honored to bring on the senior reporter for Orlando Magic HQ, Brett James, to talk about the game. How you doing today, bro?
Doing really good, man. Be doing a little bit better if Orlando was able to find a way to win this game. But doing good, man. I mean, vibes are high. Paolo and Franz played good, and got to give respect where it's due, man. Atlanta got their third win in a row, so definitely got to put some respect on their name.
No, for sure. And for any Hawks fans who aren't aware, Orlando went through a rough patch as soon as we did, basically. Like, we both kind of went through a lot of attrition with injuries, so unfortunate outcomes. And so both these teams are kind of finding their footing at the same time. And these next couple of games, tonight's game and then the game on Friday, are probably going to have some pretty big implications for tiebreakers, seeding, just the way our seasons are shaping up. So tonight was a win outside of just, the actual game itself. Like, it may have some things going forward. I wanted to ask you, from what you saw, like, it felt to me, at least in the first quarter, that we might have played better defense than Orlando played against us. And that was like the first time I felt like the Hawks were able to match a team defensively in terms of like the caliber of Orlando. Like, we've been a much improved defensive unit, but that first quarter, it felt like, and it waxed and waned throughout the game. But that first quarter in particular, it felt like we were able to impose our will defensively a bit more than you guys were. I'm just curious, like, your feel and your read on that.
Yeah, I think coming out the gates, I mean, Orlando was extremely lackadaisical, kind of lacked that energy, even having a night off last night. And I give a lot of credit to Atlanta. I mean, I said it earlier, I think maybe in that first half that, give them credit because every shot Orlando's taking just about is contested on the perimeter, driving inside. You guys did a great job of really filling the lanes on a lot of those high screen pick and rolls. And you guys looked like a unit that came in prepared, knew what Orlando was going to do. Franz got off to a good start, but you forced Paolo into a couple early turnovers. Cole Anthony had some really terrible, ugly turnovers. And like I said, you just got to give credit to Atlanta's defense for coming in and, locking up, especially setting that tone early on.
Yeah, Cole had a moment where he turned the ball over at half court, fouled Ricochet, and then I thought he checked himself out the game, but he like ran into the tunnel and then came back. So
Yeah,
is that
that was pretty funny.
Yeah. So it's interesting too that, like, we came out with that defensive intensity. Shots were contested. Paolo and Franz still both gave us 30 balls.
Mhm.
Strong performance from both of them. I'm sure they'll be one of your standouts. But starting with the Hawks, I think my standout has to be Caris LeVert. This is his second game in the Hawks uniform, and he stepped up big for us. Like, there were moments where Orlando started walking us down. Caris hit some big shots to try and turn the momentum back, particularly in the fourth quarter. There was a shot where Orlando was up 2. It was about 7 minutes left. The Hawks had a stagnant possession. Caris was able to float into some open space and knock down a 3. And so I thought he was pretty big on both ends. The rebounding has popped. Like, we're coming from a guy, he's playing basically the minutes that DeAndre Hunter was. And Hunter, although he's bigger, doesn't play bigger. He's 6'8". You think he's 6'4". I've ranted about it on the podcast, Twitter, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. And it felt like Caris has taken it upon himself to be on the glass, be disruptive. So I've definitely been very impressed with him. And it's interesting too, because I think the perception of Caris is like he's kind of like a tough bucket getter, like he's gonna
Yeah.
go to work, get in his bag. But tonight, all 6 of his shots were assisted. Or all 6 of his makes were assisted. So he's playing within the flow of the offense. He's not forcing anything, being decisive. So I've really liked what I've seen from him. I wasn't the biggest fan, but within 2 games, like, I think he's done everything we could have imagined and everything we could have asked for him in terms of that trade for DeAndre Hunter. So what were your thoughts about Caris LeVert's performance? And then who would you highlight for the Magic?
I mean, I think for Caris LeVert, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think he led all bench scores
Yep.
tonight.
Mhm.
And yeah, let's see. It was, 18 points, 6 of 11 from the field, 3 of 7 from behind the arc. Just from the natural flow of the game, like you said, the way his buckets came off the flow of the game within the rhythm of the offense. He looked extremely comfortable out there for a guy only playing in his second, third game in Atlanta. And I think that's honestly a testament to him being a seasoned vet in this league, a guy who is a tough bucket getter, like we all
Right.
see with Caris. And I think that's also a credit to Quin Snyder, obviously an incredible offensive mastermind in this league. Snyder has his deficiencies like every coach, but I
Mhm.
think for him to be able to get those guys ready, prepared within a short allotted time period, especially coming from a Cleveland team that's so heavily reliant upon Trey Young, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell to carry a lot more of the offensive load in the backcourt. For Karras to come in and just play like that, I thought was phenomenal. And then on the flip side, I mean, for Orlando, it's obviously got to be Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner combined for 68 points tonight. And they did a great job. I mean, Franz, I think, came out, set the tone early for
Mhm.
Orlando, getting everything going in the first half. And then in that third quarter, you saw Paolo Banchero assert his dominance, get aggressive, start going downhill, scoring 20 points in that third period of play alone, which was a career high. But otherwise, you didn't get contributions from anybody else on the Magic, which was extremely unfortunate. A lot of it had to do with the Magic having 17 turnovers, limiting your opportunities offensively. And then the fact that Franz and Paolo combined, I think Franz had 29 field goal attempts, 22 from Paolo. So although your two young superstars did a great job tonight, you needed more help. If you have your two guys combining for 68 points and you still find a way to lose, something's wrong. And
Yeah.
clearly, Franz and Paolo had no help tonight. So that's just the nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the numbers, if you got 68 points from Franz and Paolo and you shoot 40% from three, that's pretty much you would assume a Magic win. But to your
Correct. At
point,
home.
yeah, at home too, and nobody else scored in double digits.
Nope.
So it's and that we'll definitely touch on that a little bit more later on, just
Mhm.
about like how like the personnel around them, some of the way that the Hawks are playing them. I think like it's not let them beat us. It's just more so like nobody else can beat us but them. So it's like
Correct.
you key in on them and you try to force those kickout passes and rotate off of it. So we'll definitely take a look at some of that.
For
Outside of
sure.
Apollo, I thought Goga his rim protection kind of popped on some possessions. He also hit
Yeah.
Muhammad in the face, but
Yep.
and I gave him props, and then the next possession he elbowed him in the face. So
You're like, yeah, nah.
did he get ejected? Because I was in the gym, I couldn't really tell.
He didn't get ejected. He received a flagrant, and then Gay, I think, got upgraded to a technical, if I'm not mistaken, in that moment after Scott Foster got done reviewing it. And then, of course, later on, we all saw the nasty play from Jonathan Isaac. Let's just call it what it was.
Mhm.
Unfortunate. Obviously, glad everybody's okay, but Jonathan also received a flagrant. So two
Okay.
players got a flagrant today for Orlando.
Yeah, so I didn't see Goga on the floor much after that, so I wasn't sure if that was a
Not
rotation.
really. Nah, he didn't get ejected, but yeah.
So yeah, and just to touch on that play real quick, I mean, it was not necessarily a I don't think it was malicious. It was just he had no
Mhm.
chance of testing it, so it was just like that's a dangerous play. I think it should have been probably a flagrant too, but I think he got away with just um, a contusion. So hopefully Veet will be fine. I don't know about Larry. His ankle looked pretty bad. We don't have any information on that just yet, but I'm expecting a little bit worse news for him. But hopefully he'll be fine too. But to kick it into the play style tendencies. From what I saw, it felt like the Hawks, as good as Orlando's defense is, and there were moments where it's just like, man, the Hawks can't get anything, particularly in the fourth quarter when Trae was being a little bit slow getting into action.
Yeah.
But when the Hawks were able to drive and kick, it felt like they were able to get to their spots with a little bit, I wouldn't call it ease, but just more so like when they were able to actually get some penetration, the ball was popping around. I was curious, like from when you watch the Magic on like a night to night basis, like for example, Boston's big principle is like we don't want any threes. Like we'll concede
Mhm.
middle lane drives, but we don't like we know we'll take more threes than you, and we'll limit you on threes, and then
Correct.
like try and force you in the mid range. But like, how would you describe Orlando's defensive philosophy, and like how do you think they sort of like actually like adhere to that tonight?
I mean, tonight I'd really have to go back and rewatch the game,
Mhm.
just from like a film perspective. But typically, Orlando does a great job of contesting guys on the perimeter, making sure guys can get driven off the line with their length and their versatility on the defensive side, especially when they are healthy. When you've got two great guys on the perimeter like Suggs and KCP, force
Yeah.
those guys in the middle of the lane where you got those big bodies like Ji, Goga Batadze, and even Wendell. All
Mhm.
guys who can not only contest at the rim, but guys that can just hedge, switch, and they really force teams to take it and get inside the paint and shoot. They're going to limit you on the perimeter. They're going to limit even just the attempts, but they're going to try to do their best night in and night out, really, no matter who they're playing, and force those guys into the middle.
Yeah. So that's a great point, and they do take advantage of that size and collapsing on guys. And I can't remember the exact play with Goga, but like that's at the forefront of my mind right now. That he
Correct.
shut down 3 shots just from being there. But here's an example of the Hawks sort of being able to get to the middle of the floor. So you can see the gravity that Trae has as a passer. He didn't even have the live dribble right now. But Tristan, who by the way, I loved him pre-draft, so I love seeing what he's doing for y'all.
Yeah. Great guy.
He's like, I love him, but he's stunting here a little bit against Trae. And so as he recovers back out the Karras, his weight is off center. And so when Karras goes for that jab, he's just completely shifted out of position. So this is a really nice read from Karras, and he's able to get down here really quickly. And then now he's engaging Jonathan Isaac. And as that's happening, Georges Niang is busting out to the corner. And so now Jonathan can't guard 2 at once.
Yeah, he's got to make a decision.
Right.
Contest at the rim.
He contests, and then Karras is able to dip it to Niang, and then Franz tries to get back to Niang. And then now Terrence Mann, who again, this is great defense from you guys, because here you have a 40% three-point shooter that you cut off. You cut off the layup, and now the ball is coming out to Terrence Mann, who is currently on the floor the weakest shooter, but he's actually been really good on catch and shoot threes this year, 38% on, it is low volume though. And he hits this shot, which I thought this is great offense from the Hawks, but again, like doing a good job of forcing the ball to ping pong around instead of getting like
correct
very easy looks. But I thought that there were multiple instances where they were able to do this, and then there are instances where the Magic were able to recover and sort of lock that down defensively. And honestly, for you guys, I mean, more often than not, it's going to be a defensive stop, honestly. So, yeah, so there's a couple more clips I want to show of that. And then I want to ask you a little bit about the defensive personnel versus the offensive stuff. Like Cole Anthony, after he got that turnover, we saw a lot more Anthony Black, Gary Harris, guys like that. But the best lineup for you guys tonight actually included Cole Anthony. It was Franz.
What, in terms of net rating?
In terms of plus minus.
Okay, because
Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, KCP, and Goga. They were plus 12 in 5 minutes.
So there's no you didn't say Paolo Banchero?
Nah.
Crazy. I mean, 22. Yeah, I mean, you've had a little bit more time to look at the metrics so far since the game's ended. For you guys that don't know, I was obviously in attendance covering and working the game. But damn, I can't believe Paolo wasn't included in that, considering he scored 31.
Yeah, it's the Paolo on-off stuff is kind of weird from time to time. Like I'm a big Franz guy. Like I got mad stock invested in Franz. Like I really think, that doesn't mean I don't like Paolo.
And it's only gonna go up more. It's only gonna continue going up.
I'm gonna push as much propaganda as I can. But like I feel like sometimes Paolo is sometimes tasked with worse lineups, whatever it may be. Sometimes it just comes out a bit funny. I don't think it's a huge indictment on him as a player. Although I do think, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But so in this play right here, it's funny because like Niang is not a super athletic dude, but he's really good at engaging guys. Like obviously, I don't know how much he weighs, but he's probably pretty hefty. And he's the
minivan for a reason, man. That's his nickname, minivan.
They actually Onyeka Okongwu called him the G-Wagon after the first win.
G-Wagon, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. But I want to ask you about Wendell, because Wendell is someone that myself and other Hawks fans have been like, man, Wendell is nice. Like, we would love to get him. I see a lot of Magic fans complain about him, from the offense to the aggressiveness on the glass. What are your feelings about him? What do you think? Like, why do you think he's so desired by other fan bases? And like, what's the reality of his game? Because here, like, I mean, this isn't, again, like, this is just one play, but it just made me think about like how much I've liked him as a player. But I see like Magic fans kind of disagree with me.
Yeah, Wendell's I don't even want to say he's a difficult player to evaluate. The reality of the situation is Wendell is extremely hot and cold. One day you're going to get a 20 and 11 performance where the energy's there. He asserts himself. There's a level of aggression on the glass, and even defensively just rotating, putting himself in a position to at least contest shots, even if he's not going to go ahead and make the block. And then the very next night, you're going to get 16 minutes, 4 points, 0 of 5 from the field, and a guy who looks like he's completely disinterested. And that's not an indictment necessarily on him. It could sometimes just be the flow of the game, the rhythm, maybe second night of a back-to-backs. But, nonetheless, when you just got another contract extension this offseason and you are a former lottery pick as a young guy who has dealt with a ton of injuries. You got your bag. You're expected to perform at a certain level at some point,
Right.
and there is no level of consistency with Wendell Carter. He's not a bad player, definitely not a great one. He's just another guy. That's just the honest truth and reality about him. He's not really a lob threat. He's not really a great defensive big. He's just good enough. He's just serviceable enough to be on the floor. That's just the nicest way to put it about Wendell.
Mm. And I think that's why the Mo Wagner loss I think was so big too, because you
Yeah.
go great big man play with Gogo on the floor, who I think like is super underrated. Mo was giving you, I mean, I remember when he was getting hurt,
He
like he
was
was in
six,
year
he,
conversations,
he,
right?
he was front runner for 6 man of the year conversation,
Yeah.
or at least he was top two. I mean, undeniably so.
Yeah. So it's like it's kind of tough to see that drop off. And I think like the Hawks, for us, we've kind of been spoiled, right? Like Onyeka and Clint is really good, competent center play for 48 minutes. It's not top
Correct.
tier. It's not elite. It's not like a top 5 duo by any means, but it's competent center play. It's guys who can screen, can rebound, can do all the center things. And now we're seeing Onyeka unlock some of the passing, which has been nice to see. But I want to talk about this play too, because it's just sort of the value of breaking up DeAndre Hunter's contract and the two different guys, right? So first off, it lets Vit Krejci just get out and run and lets the Hawks play random here. So Niang has great instincts. He's just going to do this little ghost screen. And as Vit dries, like you can see that Wendell Carter is not connected to Niang. He's trying to protect the rim.
Correct.
And that's an easy read. And Niang is wide open. And he's too good of a shooter to leave open like that. So I think the Hawks are finding ways to generate easier offense with the guys that they brought in. And here's another one of my favorite clips from today's game. So this is going to be a cut off of, so they're playing out of handoff scenarios. Like the Hawks do a lot of this. What they'll do is their bigs will often just dive out of these screens and open up immediately. And so this forces a switch.
Yep.
And so now Cole has to be the low man.
Correct.
And as Cole is the low man, you see Wendell has to come over. Everyone on the Magic starts to shift. Now KCP's cutting off the corner pass. And Karras, instead of staying stagnant, he's going to just cut to the basket, give his man some help. And so this is great basketball. This is understanding positioning. Like these are guys who don't know the system necessarily just yet.
Correct, yeah.
Playing out of instinct. And I think, it'll get better with time. And I sometimes I feel like watching you guys too, it's not just the lack of shooting, or it's not a bad offensive system. It's just sometimes guys, I think it's the turnovers, one thing. Like, especially with the lack of shooting, you can't turn the ball over. Like that's something the Hawks really struggle with. We don't have the shooting sort of like bubble, or like
you're telling us about shooting.
I mean, y'all
telling us about shooting.
Y'all, it's interesting because like y'all
we're on
might
pace to be the worst shooting team, I think, since the 2011 Bobcats.
The Bobcats?
Since the Bobcats.
Okay, so
we're historically bad. We're historically terrible shooting the ball.
And that's the thing for me, because it's like it's not just the 3-point shooting, it's like the 3-point defense. So like you guys are also really good at funneling shots to the right guys. So like last time I checked, we were still like among the worst teams in the league in terms of 3-point differential. I have to go check it again, maybe see where you guys are. But I think if you can mitigate threes, you can sometimes not be a heavy 3-point volume team. But I feel like it's not just like, I guess like going into the season, did you know that this team was going to struggle with shooting? Like, was that just the expectation?
1000%. Yeah. Like undoubtedly 1000%. Now, our president of basketball operations, Jeff Weltman, made it abundantly clear after the deadline. So after we made no moves at the deadline, that the team needs shooting. He knows the team needs shooting. But even going into this season, after an offseason of signing KCP, a guy who shot 40+% from behind the arc with the Denver Nuggets in back-to-back seasons, you expected the Magic's 3-point shooting to slightly increase, even though you knew offensively you still don't have shooters. Paolo and Franz, as great as they are, they're not necessarily 3-point shooters. Jalen Suggs, Gary Harris, and the rest of the team, that they're not going to be reliable, consistent enough 3-point shooters. So it's not something that the team necessarily addressed, but it's something that they do need to address moving forward if they want any shot of competing in the East for years to come.
Yeah. And I think like the cramped spacing stuff is something like you see teams like the Hawks struggle with too, but it's definitely to a whole different extent, you guys. But I think this is the careless stuff though. You mentioned the turnovers.
Correct. Yeah. Paolo,
like Yeah,
Yeah,
just
this one
stale.
was bad. I think this was his first turnover, and then he had another one a few minutes later. That was just an ill-advised pass. I think he got stopped at the elbow, kind of was
Yeah,
looking for somewhere to throw the ball, threw the ball out of the three-point line, and can't recall who stole it, but just very lackadaisical. It might have been
yeah. I
that one
think
right there.
this might be it right here.
That's it,
He just
exactly right there. Yep. Yeah, so he got inside the paint. It wasn't the elbow. Kind of got stopped and just threw it back out. Just inexcusable. Yep.
no. That's a huge play from Franz. But like, what would you like to see Paulo do here instead? Do you just want him to
Just
bully ball?
first of all, it's his gravity, and obviously you give a lot of credit to Kongwu, obviously incredible versatile defender. You know what he's going to do with his gravity, the way he's able to pull guys in. You have to kick that ball out to Franz.
Yeah.
You have to have a guy cutting. You can't have Cole Anthony just at the top of the key, just standing there waiting for something to happen. You need
Mhm,
motion. You need guys who are at least a threat on the perimeter.
mhm.
If KCP, who is having the worst three-point shooting season of his career, is your biggest threat on the perimeter right now, then something's wrong. Why is
Yeah.
Goga in the corner in the first place?
Mhm.
So many things wrong with this play just from this frame. And like I said, that comes down to not only coaching and scheme, that comes down to roster construction and guys not being able to knock down threes even when they have the opportunities. So I'm not upset with Paolo at attempting to drive the lane and to get guys to come into him with his weight and gravity. But when you get there, that's where that veteran presence and that experience comes in, where you got to know when and where and what you're going to do with the ball in those situations.
Yeah, and if you kind of compare just this alignment, right? So it's just where the double is coming matters too, right? So that double is coming in the middle of the floor, and guys are able to shrink the floor right there. But now that the floor is overloaded with the way the Hawks are, and you see they have three guys above the break, it now creates lanes for guys to cut into. But if you look back at this play where Paulo turns the ball over, there's really not a lane for people to cut into. Like everything is sort of like at this point, like where is the cut going to come from? Like maybe
Right.
it's KCP is in his way. It's an unfortunate alignment. So this play is kind of doomed once the defense collapses in, and once
Spacing is
he's in,
terrible.
right. So I think there are things that could be done that make that a little bit better. And I think it'll come a time like Franz and Paolo are still really young. Like I think that's the crazy thing. Like we
Mhm.
have these. First of all, this was crazy.
I
This
know, but I threw my hands up when Cole threw that pass. I couldn't believe it.
this is
I seriously couldn't believe it.
I've
And
seen this
that's
like
the Cole that I'll tell you, that's the Cole Anthony experience you get to. 1 minute Cole Anthony is, our Lord and Savior, and he is the guy who just provides that energy spark to this team. And you're like, all right, this guy's invaluable to this team, what he brings on and off the court. And then the next moment, and the next game, you're like, I swear he needs to be in the G League. Like the Cole Anthony experience is very real. He's the most wishy-washy guy at the point guard position in the NBA. He's got to be.
this reminds me of some guys on the Hawks. This I think this right here. I mean, this is this Dyson being Dyson, but you also like kind of just got to know the scouting report. Like you can't throw like he's creeping on this. It's like, but like the fact this is what I like. I was talking about this with I think it was the Bucks game. I was talking with one of the Bucks fans. Like Dyson reacts before Paulo can even process what's happening. Like
Correct.
he is in motion, and like Paulo can't even warn Wendell. Nobody can warn him, to be
No,
honest.
this is an incredible play on the ball.
And then he's able to take it away from him. I think he ends up getting fouled, or he gives this up. I think.
Yep.
Uh, I don't
Yeah,
even
I
think.
remember that 3-on-1 now. Yep.
So here's more of the. I think Karras has been very disruptive too. Like he has really great hands, so he's able to knock that off of KCP's leg. Like the Hawks are going to be disruptive against any team in the NBA. Just sort of like how
Mhm.
you guys were able to really contain Trae. There are these things about the Hawks that make them a tough matchup for anyone in terms of like taking care of the ball. I don't know what this call was. Was this a? Oh, it was, I think it was on Anthony.
Oh, it was on AB. Yeah, I think I think he got teed up. Yeah, AB got teed up there.
Gotcha. Yeah, like it's not like, but I'll say this too. Like, is the turnovers tonight? Is that like a typical thing you see, or do you think some of it was exacerbated by the Hawks?
No, I mean, like, I'm totally give credit to Atlanta, the game plan, just the defensive aggression that they had. But this is a reoccurring theme for Orlando. Like this has been their Achilles heel:
Mm.
unadvised turnovers, and nobody can shoot. That is what is ultimately been killing the Magic. The only reason the Magic have even been winning games this year or staying in contest is because of their defense, which has slipped in the last 20 games. Gone from a top 3 defense in the league, which they are, to a middle of the pack defense. I think they're 15th, they're 16th in the last 20 games in defensive efficiency. And yes, a lot of that has to do with the absence of Jalen Suggs. But nonetheless, excuses, next man up. You got 48 minutes of game time, and everyone's got to step up.
Honestly, I was gonna say too, like early in the season, especially like I think it was right after Franz got the oblique injury, and Jalen Suggs had that ridiculous game against Milwaukee. I was like,
Yep.
everyone on one thing I loved about your team is like they don't care how many guys are out. They're gonna grind this game out. They're gonna make it hell. They're gonna fight hard as possible. And I've never felt like effort has ever been a question for the Magic. And that's why I have so much respect for Jamal Mosley, because I feel like he has these lineups that are intrinsically in like they just have flaws, but he gets the most out of them on the defensive end. But at the same time, you have to be able to score the ball. And I think that's like night in and night out, that has been the problem. And so are you like, what do you think that, like, if I know what you may, I feel like I might know where you may want them to do, but like, what do you think the front office is thinking? Like watching such a great defense that is continuously struggling in the half court, because I think you guys are 28th in half court points per possession. Like the only teams worse is Washington and I think Charlotte.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Are you asking me what, if I was in the position of the front office, what changes need to be made and I'd be doing, or what am I thinking that the front office is currently doing with the roster?
What do you think the front office is thinking when they see like these struggles scoring the ball? Like what's their approach?
I'm telling you their approach, because Jeff Weltman just had 2 interviews. I read over his entire transcript on Thursday after the deadline, and I listened to his open mic interview the very next morning. As I paraphrase, we want all of our eggs in one basket. We are going to be a defensive-minded team. Night in, night out, we want guys who are lengthy, guys who have that defensive aggression. We're going to get up into you. We're going to be physical. And we are willing to sacrifice offense. We're willing to sacrifice scoring and three-point shooting if we're going to be an elite defensive team. That is their mindset. Now, on the flip side, they know, because he said it, we know we need shooting, right? You cannot be the 30th worst, 30th best, whatever you want to call it, the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA and expect to advance into the Eastern Conference or anywhere in the NBA, no matter how talented you are defensively. He addressed the shooting. He said they know that they need it. But at the end of the day, this is a results-driven oriented business, right? You either trade for shooters, you either improve the shooting, or you don't. And the Magic were one of 4 teams in the NBA that did not trade for a shooter, did not trade for a young combo ascending guard who can help this offense with their inept struggles in the half court. And the Magic have until this offseason, with all of their draft capital, 8 first-round picks, 12 second-round picks until 2031, a ton of cap flexibility. Well, maybe not as much once Paolo gets that extension this offseason. You're going to have a ton of movable parts: Jonathan Isaac, Gary Harris, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a lot of contracts you could potentially move off of. They need to address their shooting. Will they do it? I don't know. Time will tell, but my confidence level is shaking.
Yeah. And so that's what I find so fascinating, because the Hawks have come to a similar conclusion defensively. We want versatile guys. We want guys who can guard multiple positions, be athletic, have a lot of length, be physical. And they've gone and gotten those guys, right? Maybe not nearly as big as the Magic's defensive pieces, but Terrence Mann, Karis LeVert, Dyson Daniels, Reza Shea, these are all guys who are impactful on that end of the ball because of their skill sets, right? But it doesn't work offensively if you don't have someone to tie it all together. Like we see Houston having the same problem. Houston is also really bad in the half court, but they make it up with putbacks and offensive rebounding. And so now here's the good thing, I think, for you guys. Like the defense is so special, and it's not easy to make Trey Young struggle. It's not easy to make the Hawks worse with Trey Young on the floor than he was off, which is what he was tonight. And I think it's just the type of different looks. We're going to look at Trey's turnovers. So the fact that Goga can come all the way out here, get a hand on the ball, right? Now the Hawks should be in a 4-on-3 situation. But as Goga retreats, he remains active. This is a no look from Trae. He's not like he's not looking at Onyeka, who's wide open on the rim. He's trying to he's trying to throw a dart right here through this gap, and Goga gets a hand on it. Like this is not an easy play. Like look at Trae. Like he's staring at Muhammad Gay, who's right next to him. So like I understand why it's like I can understand why it's so tempting to keep these really defensively focused lineups because they're so special. Like here, this isn't really on Trae, but like still Franz gets a hand on this. Like it's not easy to disrupt these types of passes from Trae.
Oh, it was cold. It was cold. Did Franz did he tip that?
He got a tip on the actual pass.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Look it up. Then here's like they just do. You guys do such a good job of collapsing on the ball. There's 3 guys within 2 feet of Trae, and this is knowing the scouting report, knowing he wants to go here.
Of course.
And it's like it's so weird to see Trae not make the reads that he usually makes in his sleep. But I don't know if I think he overthinks against teams like Orlando sometimes because he knows they're everywhere, and so he's trying to outthink them here. I think on this play, he's like, well, they expect me to do it here. You know, it's like it's a match, and it's really fun to watch, except when Trae struggles, and it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
hard to watch.
I will say, I mean, Trae still, despite Orlando's defensive effort, especially through those first 3 quarters before he heated up, got those 12 in the fourth, and obviously came through. Trae's gravity, I mean, all eyes on him every moment of the game. Defense is collapsing. Obviously, they threw multiple looks at him defensively tonight. Traps, hedging, coming over, going under screens. Just it's incredible seeing, like you said, the way that Atlanta might have these versatile guys, but you need a guy who can sew it all together. And that's exactly what Trae is. He's the engine that gets them going, and that's exactly the same prototype player that Orlando needs, that Paolo and Franz need to alleviate that ball pressure, to kind of make it all work. And Trey Young is just honestly just a master at what he does.
Yeah, so now we can take a look at a couple of those assists. Now that you gave him some props, I was going to keep going into his turnovers, but now
no. He was special tonight, despite what the box score says, when it mattered the most.
Yeah, and we'll definitely take a look at that fourth quarter because, I mean, no matter what he's shooting, like I feel very confident about when he takes a shot in the clutch. He's leading the league in clutch points this year. He has the most game winners in the league. Special player when it matters the most, right? So you can see some of that gravity here. The Hawks, again, like they love these ghost screens because that little moment of hesitation is enough for Trae to completely capitalize on. And so Tristan isn't sure if they want to switch this. And then when Trae seemingly gets open, he just tries to get back to him. And then that's when the behind the back pass, this comes right on the money to Regis Shea. And that's just that's a ton of space created just based off Trae's gravity. And then being able to make that pass, like there's no other way to make this unless he pivots back. And by then Tristan can cover. So like,
and to me, like I said, that's obviously props to Trae. Like I said, we talk about his gravity and just his ability to read the floor. But to me, that says more about Tristan. That says more about the coaching, right? And I mean, look, inevitably, even as great as Orlando's defense is, you're going to have your defensive breakdowns. You're going to have your rookie moments. But on those flare screens, when he's going to come back out of the 3-point line and pop off that screen, right, that needs to be in the game plan. That needs to be like, hey, you need to be disciplined in staying in your lanes. Don't try to go over everything. Don't try to hedge everything. Franz is a very good and underrated defender. People don't talk about Franz's defense enough. You've got a lengthy, good Franz kind of staying, hip the pocket on Trae. You don't need to disengage from Regis Shea there. So having seen it from like I said, from the film side of it, now having gone back and look at it, like I said, that's just rookie mistakes.
And that's the thing too. It's like, I'm forgetting what my point was. I lost it. I'll come back.
It'll come back to you.
But it was something about like I forgot about it. Even like this play too, like this isn't an assist or anything from Trae's gravity. I just want to point out Karras being able to take advantage of just like going to work. Like this is him going to work, but not overly dribbling. Like it's one dribble, okay, through the legs, step back, just enough space, and he rises up and knocks it down like that. This is a huge shot for the Hawks. Again, on this possession, like this was super stagnant. Trae got the switch against Wendell, and then he just
Trae was dribbling the clock out that possession. Now that I'm remembering now.
So that reminds me. Okay,
and he damn near carried. I think he damn near carried earlier, like on the side, closer to the Magic's bench.
Mm.
but I think it was like a couple seconds before that.
They don't call those anymore. So
No, they do not.
I was gonna say, I remember now. Trusting your great defenders is something I think the Hawks are still learning. Where it's like Dyson on an island does not need help against most players. Okay, even if he gets beat, or even if he looks like he's getting beat, he most likely isn't. So it's like, don't compromise the entire defense by trying to help someone who's in a good position still. And I think that particular play with Franz and Tristan was that sort of example where Franz was still in good position defensively, and there really wasn't any need to try and give him help there. I think this is like sort of a testament to the deep three gravity. So like Wendell is picking him up higher on the floor, and so because of that, and Larry clears through, then that lane opens up because Wendell has to come out and respect the shot. That's just good transition basketball. Karras runs up and down the floor. This play, you got Ji completely, and I know Ji has a lot of leeway as a defender, right? Like he's a special defender, but here I feel like he left Karras and just he's not really doing much, right? And then this ends up getting kicked out, and that was a big three for the Hawks as well. I understand want to show help on Trae, but I felt like he probably roamed a little bit too much there. And then there's that play.
Yeah. Oof.
With the head. That was a rough one. And then let's take a look at the fourth quarter stuff real quick. And then I want to talk a little bit about Paolo and Franz and like the difficulty in guarding them because it's ridiculous, bro. It felt like it was really easy. It felt like it was really easy for Franz in particular. Like I just think it looks easy for Franz anyway. But
And don't get me wrong, this is not even on the Hawks. It's not an indictment on them. Like, especially the tear that Franz has been on as of late, especially coming back from his oblique injury. And we all know how he was playing prior to that injury.
like a superstar.
Franz makes it look effortless. Like Franz will have the quietest 25 points you'll ever see on an efficient night. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So here's some of the Trae clips from the fourth quarter. So he smoked a couple layups at the rim a little bit earlier, but here this is the important stuff from Onyeka Okongwu here. He's gonna just hang up Paolo here, right? Like this is essentially a Gortat screen just higher up on the floor, and he freezes Franz here. Like I can't really tell exactly what he does. I think it's a decel.
I think he decelerates, but then he pump fakes almost to the corner, and then he goes up with it.
Like this, so Dyson has his hands up. Franz is unsure whether to commit or not, and he puts his hands up, and then Trae goes straight to the rim.
Yep.
Very, very crafty, and you have to be crafty at his size, like otherwise you will never be able to finish a layup in the NBA. So that was a nice little pickup from him. And then here, similar, he kept doing this, like he would just sort of turn back around.
Yep, I think he nailed the logo one here. Yep.
This is the logo, and this is the difficulty, right? So here comes that ghost screen. AB's like, oh wait, do I switch? Do I go under? Paolo wants to go under, and then you can't go under.
Miscommunications.
Yep.
Yeah, Mosley talked about that in the post game. He's talking about the turnovers, talking about the miscommunications. He said defensively, he said especially in the fourth quarter, a lot of missed opportunities there from the defense in their rotation. So probably one of the examples he was probably referring to in his head.
So here, AB's expecting a pick. You can tell from the way he shifts his head, right? He's looking like, okay, like where's my help coming from? But the pick isn't on that side.
Trae can get a step. Yep.
And this is a tough finish over Apollo's contest as well. But it's that threat of the pick that isn't even being set that pauses AB just for a second. And AB's a really gifted defender. Really gifted.
Yeah, great perimeter defender.
And Trae's able to beat him to the spot and then loft this over Apollo's contest too. Very tough shot and just types of things that he'll do on a game-by-game basis.
That's why he's an all-star, man. That's why he's an all-star.
I know. I saw you tweet that like two Magic fans like expect Trae to be selected.
Yeah, I seen that. I said that yesterday.
I think if Franz played, quite honestly, Franz would have been selected first off. Like he wouldn't have been a replacement.
Yeah, of course.
But did you think he had a chance to be selected as a replacement?
No. As soon as Shams had tweeted out that Giannis was missing the All-Star game, I was like, well, it's Trey Young, and deservingly so. Like it's Trey Young, then Franz, then maybe LaMelo. But I mean, Franz was honestly playing at an all-NBA level prior to him going down with injury and missing 20 consecutive games. But I would have taken an All-Star game.
Mm. So I want to take a look at some of Franz's stuff. He what's his career high is because the Hawks broadcast said he
38.
high. Oh, really? I thought he
38
had
is
a
his career high.
okay. So that's what I thought he had a 40-point game at some point.
Nah, Paolo had a 50 earlier in the year against Indiana.
I remember that. So 37 for Franz tonight on 29 shots. 11 of his 15 were unassisted, which I think just speaks to the growth that he's had as an on-ball scorer. And he's a special slasher. Like, and that's why I sort of hesitate with the Cooper Flag comps, because it's like I don't know if Flag can. It's kind of unrelated, but I don't know if he can get to this level offensively. But that's just how special I think Franz is on this end. Like, he's just so good getting to the rim. Here in transition, just being aggressive. See if we can get some half court stuff. He has like his scoop layup is so nice. This is like 3 Hawks in the vicinity. He's able to slow him down, get to his spot. I was curious, like, does anyone ever make it look tough for Franz? Like, I guess, like, who's the best Franz defender? I know all players have a particular guy. Is there any guy for Franz?
Man, you're okay. Now you're putting me on the spot, and I'm having to really think. Okay, off the top of my head, I'm going to say no, but I will say every time we play Miami, home and away, whoever Bam gets switched onto one-on-one, I mean, just it's incredible. It doesn't matter if it's Paolo, it doesn't matter if it's Franz. Like, Bam has his way one-on-one with us. I think that's also a credit to Spoelstra and just obviously his coaching philosophy. But I think Bam's the only one off the top of my head. There's probably a defender or two out there that's consistently locking up Franz every time we play him. And I'm just drawing a blank, but I think Bam was the first one off the top of my head where I've seen him get up in their grill and just, really make life difficult for them on the court.
And you can forget he's 6'10" until he does stuff like this. Like, just the ground coverage, the spin from the elbow and get this layup directly to the box over the shot blocker is crazy. He was definitely in his bag tonight. I was curious too. Like, it seemed like Paolo was getting guarded by our centers more often, and Franz kind of like had the wing matchups. And I think Dyson's a special defender, but like Franz is just a little bit bigger, so sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge for him against guys like that. So, and also you guys were trying to hunt Trae as much as possible. So what the Hawks were doing, okay, Trae, try and stick with him as much as you can for Dyson to get through that screen.
Right.
And then here's the thing though, there's so much space. There's so much space for Franz to work with. And Dyson, he eats that in the chest. The help comes, but there's only so much you can do when he's that tall.
Yeah, and that's just a good play by Franz at that point.
He puts that over the top, tough play. I think Dyson had a special with the NBA. Like, if you watch on League Pass, sometimes it'll come up. He's basically saying, like, there's great defense and there's great offense. Like, I'm just out there to make guys work as hard as possible. Like, and that's all you can do against guys like this, right? There's only so much you can do against some guys. I like how active he is off the ball too. Like, Wendell's able to get positioned against Larry Nance, so Karras wants to go give him help. And Franz isn't just standing out there. Like, he's being active, gets to the glass. Like, he gets a lot of easy buckets that way every time it feels like I watch him. Here you see another switch force. So AB's coming, and then Trae's just stunts, and then Terrence Mann is able to get back in front. Like, great defense, but that's just a tough bucket. One thing I do feel like I hate, though, I hate when teams just let these switches happen. Like, AB isn't really setting the screen. You know what I mean? Like, there's really no, and especially, like, I know Franz has improved so much as a three-point shooter, but I'd much rather him take a pull-up three than be able to get to his spot.
Oh, any day of the week.
Yeah. So, like, I do wish sometimes the Hawks would just not concede those guard-to-guard switches. I feel like a lot of NBA teams just do it by default. But, like, you'll see all these clips are starting with Franz going at Trae. Here comes the stunt. And it puts the defender at a disadvantage. Like, here, ideally, Niang stunts a little bit more. Like, you have to dig more off of Jonathan.
Yeah, like, that's not even an effort. It's just showing hands.
He's not showing any resistance. And this is a ridiculous shot. Like, bro, like, making it from here is crazy. And it's not
over
even
two
like
defenders, yeah.
Defenders. Larry Nance still almost gets to it, and it just drops in off the top of the backboard. That's a special shot. Like, and this is the type of stuff where I'm just like, man, like, I really don't know who else is in these combos, to be honest. Like, I just tweeted, like, we using Scotty Barnes combos and Superstars. So, like,
Scotty Barnes.
Just to give non-Magic fans some context, estimated plus minus is like the most widely respected all-in-one metric. It basically tries to assess player possession impact per 100, right? There's only 3 guys in the top 5% defensive and offensive. It's Joel Embiid, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Franz Wagner. So it's like that's the level of impact that he's having on his team. And so I'm always impressed with him when I watch him. I wish that Trae, and hopefully, we do get a guy, whether it's Reza Shea or Jalen, getting to that level of creator. It takes time. It took time for Franz. I think Franz has always had better ball skills than either of them, though. Like Franz has always had guard skills within a big's body.
Correct.
When did you see the flashes? When were you like, okay, like this guy can get to a 22 point score on good efficiency?
I think he really developed that ball handling skills in that onus offensively his rookie year, because he was just really thrusted into that position, right? 2021, him and Jalen Suggs are both lottery picks. They're on a terrible Orlando team. I believe they won 21, 22 games that year. They're just kind of rookies on a bad team that just had a lot of usage. So getting that experience early kind of helped establish that level of confidence for him. And then when you saw Paolo come into the scene 2022, now you see Paolo playing at a rookie of the year level. Obviously, this guy looks like a future, perennial superstar in the making. That alleviated some of that pressure off of Franz. You could see him coming into that second fiddle role with that experience of being a number one in his rookie year. Now he just had to put the two together, and you started seeing those pieces really start coming together for him. And I think that's kind of when you saw the wheels turning. And then last year, you saw Jalen, you saw Franz and Paolo all put it together, right, to kind of take that next ascension together. 47 wins, one of the best defenses. Jalen Suggs shoots nearly 40% from behind the arc. Franz has a regression in terms of his shooting, but the body control, his ability to get downhill, just his craftiness in the way that he's able to manipulate defenses, you could see how much that first year of just being kind of thrown into the fire really kind of propelled him to the player that he's at now. And he's slowly started to put it together. And now I think undeniably he's playing at an all NBA level, even though he's missed the requirements for it. I mean, I think there's almost no argument for just how incredible he's been this season. I mean, honestly, blown everybody's expectations out the water, even that of Magic fans.
Yeah. I had a tweet like, it was like they're like the way that Franz has been playing, like with Paolo going down, shows his ability to scale, right? Like,
yeah,
he could scale and be incredible as the own creator and still maintain a defensive impact, but he can also scale his game to accommodate Paolo. And I think that for advanced stat lovers, like I love advanced stats, right? But I also have an appreciation for the eye test. I see what Paolo does when he's on the floor. And I don't believe he's as bad as like the on-off numbers show. Right. But I can't deny over 2 or 3 seasons, like it's a huge gap in terms of the effectiveness with Franz on the floor versus Franz and Paolo versus Paolo without Franz.
Yeah.
And it's a significant enough sample size where I am questioning, okay, not the question, the pairing itself, but the rotation surrounding these guys needs to be a little bit more catered to them, right? So like, for example, Franz, I think, at least in my opinion, he can do more with less just because of the getting downhill, some of the passing, some of the defense. But for Paolo, it's more so like, I think you have to think of him in terms of like a Giannis or a LeBron. He needs as much space as possible. And then that's where you really see him be special. And so I think that's where, like, as the roster gets better, it's kind of similar with what happened with Boston, right? Like for Boston, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, like for a long time, can they play together? It's 2 wings. They're redundant. It's not going to work. They finally got that right piece of versatility around them, and it all clicked. And so that's why I'm curious. Like, I know that your particular approach is, okay, let's get that offensive star to tie all the defense together. What about the Boston model isn't necessarily convincing you with this Magic core? Do you think it's just going to be tougher to find like that unicorn big or these guards, another guard like Suggs? Or like what's kind of like leading you down that path that's kind of like similar to what the Hawks are trying to do, where you still have that offensive superstar who can be hunted, but you have a great group of defenders around him?
Yeah, it's tough to say, and it's funny enough you bring up the Boston comparisons, because I feel like not even just the Magic community, really a lot of the Celtics community as well, really see that Franz and Paolo are on a very similar trajectory in terms of their talent, their skill set, their size, as JB and JT were kind of at 22, 23 years old, as they were going through their growing pains in their time. I guess what was it, Brad Stevens at the time in the Celtics. I think you made a great point in terms of Franz being able to do more with less, and then Paolo needing that space and those shooters around him. I think just for the sake of argument, if you just had Paolo out there, you need 3 other shooters, and then you need a big in the middle. If you have Franz out there, he can make 1, maybe even 2 if you're being generous, shooters on the perimeter, make everybody else cohesively all flow together, and then he can still do his thing, get downhill, attack, run those high screen pick and rolls, create for others. We know how versatile Franz is in that sense. I think with the pairing, though, because Paolo has a much more difficult time assimilating himself into playing alongside Franz, right? And it's not to say that the pairing is bad, but it's way harder for Paolo to kind of share that with Franz versus Franz coming back down to that number 2. Franz can switch in between that number 1 and that number 2 option a lot easier, and it's a lot more seamless for him. I just think that in general, this team needs to invest not everything because they need to keep that defensive identity and that mindset, but they need at least 1 or 2 shooters, consistent guys to put around a Paolo and a Franz, even if it's a Malik Beasley, right? Just someone of that caliber, that prototype that, hey, look, maybe you're not getting that Kobe White or that Colin Sexton, that lead guard, but you need a guy who is going to jack up 10 threes a night and 40% of them are going in. Consistently night in and night out. It's been their Achilles heel. It's going to continue to be their Achilles heel until they address it. It's quite literally as simple as that.
And what's interesting about that point about the guards, I think there are multiple guys that could fit in. Like the names you said weren't the ones that immediately popped into my head. So we'll talk about that. But I do want to ask you before I forget about it. There is I feel like my intrinsic understanding about the differences between Paolo and Franz is just the way they operate. Like Paolo is very much like in the post, not always, but like he can really operate at the post, whether it's a face up, back down, isolation situations, or at the elbow, where Franz is a little bit more fluid in terms of the pick and roll stuff, the cutting. Do you think that's what ultimately breaks down to like their scalability? Because sometimes when I watch Paolo off ball, yes, he can hit those standstill threes, but it's not a ton of utility. There's also isn't a ton of like interaction between both of them on the court. So for myself, and then also like for any Hawks fans who aren't as familiar with their games, like what do you think really breaks down to Franz being more versatile? And then why do you think that, like, what is it about their games in particular?
I think Franz's just offensive game, I think in general, is just more versatile. You made a good point talking about Paolo usually playing outside of the post because a lot of his 3-point attempts in general, at least the ones that he knocks down, are not catch and shoot. He doesn't get a lot of catch and shoot opportunities. A lot of that comes from off the dribble, in transition, pull up threes, kind of in the flow of the game, not necessarily, hey, go out there, high screen pick and roll, guys drop back and they're giving you space, take the shot.
Yeah.
It's so hard to evaluate with the both of them because their skill sets are so similar yet so different. And I think it's harder for Paolo because when Paolo is, down on the block, backing guys down, and then eventually that double is going to come or someone's going to hedge, even if you've got Franz out there on the court, Franz is still not an incredible 3-point shooter. Like he's good enough that you got to respect the shot.
Yeah.
But guys can leave him if they really want. Guys can leave a KCP. Guys can leave maybe not Jalen Suggs, but they can just collapse the paint, make life difficult for Paolo in the post, and that ultimately hinders him and his abilities. And then it's just a trickle down effect from there from the offense as a whole. Whereas, like you said, Franz gets downhill, his ability to cut, move without the ball, create for others. There's just a lot more versatility with Franz as a primary ball handler, as a point forward in this offense, than it is, I guess, necessarily being initiated through Paolo.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And when you kind of look at the split in terms of their shot charts or their plays types, it definitely makes sense. You also said something about Franz in terms of his development that stuck out to me, and that was he was thrown into the fire. He was asked to create as number 1.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing with Ricochet right now, and Hawks fans are frustrated with the fact that he's not getting 25 to 30 minutes a night. And for the minutes he was on the floor tonight, he was impactful, both ends, 4 assists tonight. He over his last 6 games, he's up to like 15 points. He's shooting way more effectively from 3. But I think that their approach to his minutes, but also his role, is just a lot more different than you would see from a typical lottery pick or number one pick, right?
Mhm.
And they're not willing to. I think one thing is about like the international stuff. Like international players just have a ton more tread on their tires, like in their immediately preceding pre-draft season. Like Reza Shea played until May. He played about 70, 80 games. It was a lot of wear on his tires. So I think that's part of it. But I guess like when you think about guys who are superstars, sometimes you have to struggle, right? Like if you think about Trae was thrown into the fire, Luca,
Mhm.
Franz, Paolo, like you have to sometimes make mistakes to figure out how to be great. And I think that it is unfortunately probably going to be a little bit detrimental to his development that the Hawks weren't able to or in a position to say like, okay, go figure this out, right?
Correct.
And so I do hope that maybe at some point he gets some minutes like that, or he gets like. But I think with the way that this team is trending, I'm not sure when he's going to get that development. And I am in terms of his long term sort of like outcome or like his high end outcome, it's probably getting less and less likely the more minutes he gets to like initiate or try to try things. Because when he does, sometimes it looks great, sometimes it looks awful. But like I'm sure the same thing was true for Franz and Paolo. Like guys have to work through things. So I am thinking about that sometimes when I watch someone like Apollo or Franz. I'm not saying that Zach can get there, but like, is it somehow pigeonholing him before he even gets a chance to try and develop and blossom outside of that? Could be interesting.
Yeah, I just think it's different for every player, every situation, and everyone's different. We talk about Franz and Paolo kind of being thrown into the fire, kind of being thrust into that situation. I mean, take a look at Donovan Mitchell, right? His days in Utah, he was thrown into a situation where Utah had just lost their all-star and Gordon Hayward goes to Boston. Donovan Mitchell was expected to be a combo guard, defensive-minded guy, was not expected to be a scorer, and comes onto the scene in Quin Snyder's offense next to Ricky Rubio and just is a 20-point per game guy, right? He
Yep.
kind of had to earn it still. He was still sitting behind the bench to begin the year behind Rodney Hood. But once Utah realized what they had in this kid, you know, ultimately they gave him the keys. Ultimately, that development of letting him kind of come into that role allowed him to become the superstar that he is today.
Yeah.
So I think just with the right coaching, the right system around him, and just that experience level of having to mess up in order to learn to be great, I think it just works differently for every player. And I think that was just, I just think that there is an avenue and a lane for him to become a very good player in this league one day.
Yeah. I think his floor, I'm still very confident in. Like at the
Oh,
very
his
minimum,
floor
it's
is
like
great.
rotational, easy. And I think when I think about too, like the difference between him and Jalen, it's like, okay, well, Jalen Johnson is ridiculous open court athlete, really good in the pick and roll, short roll passer, high low big functionality. And then you have Reza Shea, who's a little bit more fluid, can operate running movement screens. He can run a little bit of pick and roll. He can. So it's like it's kind of an overlap with like Paulo and
Mhm.
Franz, where like you have this player who potentially has the ability to create more out of space, and then another one who is really dominant physically. And so I think you could get a similar dynamic that could be really beneficial for the Hawks if Reza Shea does get the chance to reach that outcome, which I feel like he will. And then another question about development before we wrap it up. Dyson Daniels is having. I was so high on Dyson. Like actually, I've been begging for the Hawks to get him for a long time. And so I feel very vindicated that we finally got him. The offensive stuff is getting crazy. Okay, so this
Yeah, that
and
play was crazy. That
this
play
play,
was crazy.
I was like, yo. And he's a heavy spin roll user. Also, note that he hooks Tristan here. Like this is crafty, or actually no, he didn't. It looked like he did. But this spin, he covers so much ground. And he gets straight to the rim, and he times it perfectly. And I know that Jalen Suggs, like a lot of the offensive growth for him was not immediate. Like came in was really rough offensively, but was special defensively, and so that got him tons of
Correct.
minutes. What we saw last year was like, oh my, like this is he got the contract that proved his value, and I think maybe Dyson may command a similar amount. What what do you think was so crucial for Jalen Suggs' development as an offensive player? Because I feel like him and Dyson have a lot of similarities, right? Especially with
Correct.
the way that he came into the league. Him and Derek White as well. But I feel like what
Mhm.
Dyson is doing is so like it's making me so optimistic. So I just want to know like
I
what is
think
what,
I would tell you Dyson's ceiling is higher.
that's
I
exactly what
still don't, and I just think his his athletic ability, his versatility, both sides of the floor.
Mhm.
Dyson's got an extremely high ceiling that I don't think many outside of Atlanta that maybe watches or follows the Hawks closely or just the NBA as a whole truly realize the type of talent that he is, right?
Yeah.
In just what his ceiling is. Obviously, so much untapped potential there. But in terms of Jalen Suggs, I mean, the first 2 years of his career, obviously, we know he struggled offensively. I mean,
Mhm.
terrible 3-point shooter, but he missed over 100 games. I'm almost certain, or just played over 100 games. That's what it was. I think he played
Mhm.
101, 102 games his first 2 seasons. So, you know, being a young player, being thrusted into the fire with injuries,
Yeah.
it's hard, especially as a top 5 pick. You have the expectations. You're supposed to be the face of the franchise alongside Franz at the time, and you're supposed to be the point guard of the future. And it's just not coming together despite how great defensively you are and you were. Year
Mhm.
3, Paolo's going into year 2, Franz is going into year 3, continues to work on his shooting, continues to just get that part of his game down, which opens up the floor for the rest of the team and himself. And ultimately, all came together. He shot nearly 40% from behind the arc last year. We saw him take over games. We saw him have huge performances in the postseason, getting
Mhm.
wins over Cleveland. And he really found his footing. He found that confidence. And I really feel like the guys and the coaches poured into him. Like, no matter how bad he might have been playing offensively, no matter how many lackadaisical turnovers he might have had, there was always that positive reinforcement with him. And Jalen's an extremely vocal guy, an extremely emotional guy, sometimes for better or for worse. And I
Yeah.
think constantly having that reassurance from the staff and from the players that, hey, we trust you, like, keep shooting. I mean, that did so much wonders for him and that he deservingly earned that contract.
Yeah, I think, even for both of us who covered the team, we may not have nearly as many insights as the guys in the front office, right? And so Jalen Suggs is a worker. You could tell that from the way he plays, but
Oh, for
the
sure.
rep of him was always like, this is a guy with crazy work ethic. And so he was always going to work to get better. But there's also has to be indicators that someone can get better too. Like, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it don't matter how much you work. Like, sometimes you just can't improve certain things. And I thought for him that the shot always never looked terrible. Maybe at least from what I
Mhm.
saw, I never thought it was like unfixable. But for Dyson, it's kind of similar. Like, Dyson has really great touch. He has these flashes of ball handling. This has been almost become his go-to move. Like, it's just a change of pace and a switching hands sort of hezzy. He just opens up his hips and his feet, and he's been able to just blow past guys and beat guys to the rim. Like, this has been a nightly occurrence from him. And honestly, like, this is all-star level stuff just because of the
Mhm.
defense as well. Here he gets back to that spin move against Tristan, and then he spins back over his shoulder before Tristan can react. Like, this is counters on counters, like him just playing out of structure, like without thinking too much. He's having a really great run. And then if you look at the assist too, like he's figuring out how to find guys in different areas. Like, he is our backup point guard right now. And this is a kid who couldn't get minutes in New Orleans, right? Over guys like Najee
Crazy,
Marshall.
man. What was it? He was 2022, right? He just got drafted in 2022. Yeah, I mean, crazy, man.
And I understand too, like they had a lot of wings, but he's always had this sort of guard upside. When you watch him, I watched like one of his breakdowns pre-draft. He's like, like I feel like I'm a 1 or a 2. Like I feel like I can do either, and I feel like I can guard 1 through 5. So it's like, and this pass too was crazy. This is some Jalen Suggs stuff. I know
Damn,
Suggs
I don't
played.
even remember this pass. I must have
Yeah, he
blanked on that one.
he threw this basically 60-ish feet right over that. So Wendell points out, okay, look, he's streaking. Larry's streaking. Wendell says, go get him, Paolo. And Paolo is going back, and this ball was right past his hand, like right in the breadbasket. Touchdown. And he's so good at, like, this is something he did in New Orleans. This is why I think like this trade was so smart, because nothing he's doing he hasn't flashed before, right? It was
Correct.
just about, does he have the opportunity? Does he have the consistency? Does he have the work
Mhm.
ethic? Does he have the confidence? And confidence as a defensive first player can be really fickle, right? It's just like it's hard to figure out, like, okay, I'm missing shots. I need to keep shooting. It doesn't always come naturally to guys, like especially guys who are naturally unselfish, which I think both guys like defensive minded guys are unselfish. So he's like, I don't want to shoot the team out of it. Um, I'm happy you see the same that I see in Dyson. Like, I really think he could be super, super special. I think he has all-star potential. I think this year he probably might get first team all defense, depending on where the Hawks finish. The positionless stuff is getting a little tough for guards.
Yeah,
and
to
it's
say, I mean, you know your guys, Wemby, probably Rudy, and off the top of my head, maybe
I think Jaren could
I don't
do
know
it. I
about
think
Derek. I don't know about Derek White, but he'll probably be second team. I don't know. I'd
yeah,
have to sit there and think about it.
I think it'd be Wemby, Jaren, maybe
Yeah, Triple
Amen.
J's got to get in there.
JJJ is having a great season. Amen, probably one of the OKC guys. Maybe I
Damn,
think
yeah, I
J
didn't think. Yeah, men. J Dub's gonna get in there.
Dub's gonna be all defensive combos. Like it's not gonna be easy. I think he's gonna
Probably
make a
probably make a case. Probably make a case for Dort.
short too. I
I
think he'll
mean,
make a team, but I don't know if it's first team per se. But
look, making that team's hard enough. You got 10 guys in the league.
yeah,
So
do you? So two questions before we wrap up. Actually, because this reminded me. Do you think they need to expand all-star rosters, and do you think they need to expand all defensive teams? Like I don't know. I don't understand why we don't have a third all defensive team.
yeah,
When
they need to expand the all defensive teams to first, second, and third team. That's fine. All star rosters, no, they need to stay the same. They just need to keep it East and West. Stop with all the team Chuck, team this, or drafting players like they used to do the captains.
yeah,
Just do East and West, man. Like I'm so tired of seeing this just like this gimmick of like I think Shaq took like LeBron, Curry,
yeah,
and
all the old
K
heads,
all the
and
old
then
heads, and I'm like,
international.
"Dog, like, y'all did that on purpose," and it's like, I guess a part of the script,
Yeah,
but, more importantly than all of that, here's the change the NBA needs. Start your games on damn time, man. The
yeah.
people like
That's
us that work in it and covering it, and for the fans that just watch on TV, we're not trying to see the game start 15 minutes after supposedly tip off. Get that
yeah.
national anthem out the way, get the warm-ups out the way, start on time.
I texted you. I was like 7:13 tip. Is that not crazy?
I know,
And
it's ridiculous.
that's exactly what it was. I saw a graphic earlier, a couple days ago. It was like the difference in start times across different broadcasting. So like ESPN has an average start time of like 10, 12 minutes, but TNT starts with like average of 6 minutes. Then NBA TV is like average of 9. So that puts too much uncertainty for the fan. Like they don't know when to cut the game on. They
Yeah,
don't know.
it should just be right as, game scheduled for 7? Cool, 7.
It's really easy to make these things like there's a lot of things they could fix easily without doing any radical change. So we'll see what they do. I haven't really been invested in All-Star Weekend. I'm someone who loves basketball, right? So it's like it's kind of unfortunate, but I think I've always tapped in for like the skills challenge and stuff like that. But the All-Star game,
Yeah.
I skipped the last couple of years. I'll
Yeah,
probably look
it's
here,
losing its aura. It's definitely losing its aura.
yeah, we'll see, man. I don't know. Like I think the concept is I don't know. I think like you'll never be able to get guys to compete in All-Star game. Quite honestly, like I think the closest they had
Well,
was the Elam ending, and with the charity stuff that was good.
yeah.
I would have probably stuck with that just because like they're playing for more, or they could play for game checks for the other teams on their roster. Maybe like I don't know, but these guys aren't motivated by money. They're not motivated by clout. It's like no one wants to get hurt.
Yeah, they all got clout. Any NBA All-Stars got clout, so.
Yeah, there's not a lot of incentives you can give these players. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's kind of like an impossible problem to solve. It's just like will the players themselves just decide? I mean, also you got to think about the guys you put in the All-Star game. Jokic could not care less. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. But you can't keep Jokic out of the All-Star game either, you know what I'm saying? So, you kinda stuck between a rock and a hard place.
You're like him and Luka. The last couple All-Star games have been egregious. Like that
Been
was so
boring as hell.
that was bad. But yeah, man, Brett, I appreciate you so
Of
much, my
course,
boy,
man.
for coming on talking about this game, talking about things about trajectories, developmental curves, because I do think I see parallels with the way that the Hawks are trying to build this roster. Um, what guard do you want? That's what I meant to ask. I know you tried to pitch me Trae before we started. He is untouchable, unfortunately. But
That's
what
fine. I'm
guard?
not gonna shoot for the stars. I'm gonna be a lot more level-headed and reasonable. I talked about it before the deadline. We've been linked to a lot of guys. I think it's a perfect match made in heaven for a lot of players. Anywhere from an Anthony Simons, Kobe White, or Colin Sexton. I think all three of those guys bring a different, unique skill set that would help the inefficiencies offensively of this team.
Mm,
Still add to the fact that they're on reasonable contracts that are not going to, handicap Orlando, especially once Paolo gets that max extension this offseason. And they're young combo scoring guards who can get down, score on all three levels, and just really open up the floor and alleviate some of that pressure from Paolo and Franz. You give me any of those three guys, I'm happy. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Magic to do it. But of course, our front office is reluctant to make necessary changes. So we will see.
We'll see. Good
We'll
luck to y'all
see.
for the season. We'll probably see if we can run this back Friday after we beat y'all again.
We'll see, man. We definitely will see. I will say, I plan on being out of town on Friday, but we'll definitely see, man. We'll definitely see.
All right, cool. Hope y'all enjoyed the episode. Please make sure y'all go and check in with his work. It'll be in the description. And y'all be safe.